So we're so excited to have Jacqui Rogers from the Marine Teachers Association joining us on today's chat regarding COVID and how it's affected associations. And I'm going to kick off with that. So Jacqui, how has COVID impacted your association specifically?
I think the biggest impact for us, or at least the first impact for us, was definitely our annual conference, which was to be held in Tasmania in April. So we had to make a decision pretty quickly. The things were escalating very quickly in schools and across the country, and we quickly realised that travelling interstate in 2 weeks' time was getting less and less likely to be able to go ahead. So we did have to get to that point where we made a decision 2 weeks out to cancel an interstate conference that we'd spent a very long time organising. We had to work with our key stakeholders down there. The University of Tasmania and the Australian Maritime College in particular had been amazing supporters. They were sponsoring us down there. We had so many programs locked in, accommodation to cancel, a lot of providers that we'd worked with to provide really unique opportunities down there. So that was probably the biggest impact COVID had very quickly on us as an association. And that conference is probably the biggest thing we do for our members. It's such a pivotal point of contact for our members and for us as an association. And it's also when we do any feedback from members, the conference is always highlighted as something that our teachers see as very special and very unique. It's where we see our members are collaborating and working together, and we're a very small but very friendly association, and it's the teacher contacts and the teacher relationships that are the heart and the backbone of our association. So losing that opportunity for our annual conference was heartbreaking. We had planned to postpone it, so we initially said it was a postponement, not a cancellation. We were hoping that we'd be able to travel late term forward, depending on how the COVID situation presented. We did get hopeful around, I think it was about July, that we might get there as things started to open up again. But then with the second wave, that was completely taken off the table again. So that loss of our conference, without doubt, has been very difficult for us. And it's not something that we could really, sorry, that's the school bell.
Okay, we'll let you off.
That makes it real.
Yeah. And the thing about our conference is it's not really something that we can replicate in an online environment, because being marine teachers, so much of what we do is practical based or field work. We use the conference to redo a lot of our qualifications. So to be marine teachers, we have to have certain first aid qualifications, resus training, snorkeling instructors processes. And so we use that time to do a lot of updates for our teachers and training, and that can only be done in a practical environment. So it wasn't something we could replicate online. Yeah. Probably one of the other biggest challenges for all marine teachers was moving to teaching a subject that's 60% practical based. So with excursions prohibited across the state, practical activities like our boating, snorkeling, fishing, cooking, they obviously became a lot harder. So students were missing out on a lot of really valuable fieldwork experiences like rock platforms and mangrove studies. We couldn't access opportunities that we usually would, like the boat show. We work really closely with the Boating Industry Association. Our students get free access to the Sydney International Boat Show when we run a lot of careers events there and work with BIA there. Because a lot of our subject, a lot of people think our subject is very based around marine science. It's actually got a lot of avenues for students, whether they want to be a marine biologist or they want to be a marine mechanic. We offer a really broad curriculum that meets a lot of different needs. So the boat show is a really great opportunity for our students to understand the wide variety of careers that are available in boating in particular, but also things like diving and fishing and snorkeling and tourism. So losing the boat show was a big hit for us as well. And that's a time when a lot of our teachers come together, and also when a lot of our executive come together and we work with key stakeholders. So we usually have a lot of key meetings during that time with our stakeholders. So losing that opportunity to get us all in the same place at the same time presented some real challenges for us. Yeah. The other big thing that it's been challenging for us is our Boat Smart program had to be shut down. So we actually run a program where students can earn their boat license through us. We're an authorised training provider. So we run both a practical boating day, but our hub coordinators can also put the students through the boat licensing test. And if students do it with us, they earn a free junior boat licence for a year through Service New South Wales.
Okay.
That's probably one of our biggest draw cards, and also one of our best programs. We're really, really proud of it. So we had to shut down just because schools were not permitted to do excursions. Schools are not permitted to interact with other schools. So we did have to shut down one of our biggest programs. And the other thing that was really hard was we had our collaborative programming project for stage 6 to run this year. So we ran this for stage 5 last year, and we basically had a new syllabus that we had to implement for stage 5 this year. And we're very much about not reinventing the wheel. We don't want our teachers spending time doing something that another teacher's already done. So with a new syllabus coming in, we thought it was crazy that we would have, every individual marine teacher across the state programming in isolation, all doing the same thing and programming for the new syllabus. So instead, we organised a collaborative programming project. We had multiple venues across the state, and those in remote areas that couldn't get to a venue, they were joining us online. And we had our 50 modules set up on Google Drive, and we had over 70 teachers collaboratively programming, and we had 48 programs written out of 50 modules by the end of one day.
Wow.
Huge resource dump onto our Drive as well, all of which were uploaded to the website. So that meant that any marine teacher in our association started a new syllabus with programs already written that they then just had to tweak for their particular context. So we then plan to run that for stage 6 this year to support our stage 6 teachers. And we had to place that on hold. And while we could have run that in an online environment, again, one of the best benefits is actually those informal conversations that our teachers are happening as they work together with teachers from other schools. So we are holding that until we're in a position to actually do it, hopefully face-to-face, just because we know how much our marine teachers like to be working and chatting and working alongside with the other marine teachers. So we are holding out, hoping that we can get that across the line in a face-to-face format, but we will run it early next year online if we have to.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You've still been busy, and
Very busy.
getting that professional learning up and running is in a different mode is really important. But I guess, like a lot of associations, what have you sort of had to change in the last 6 months? And what sort of things have you looked at and gone, actually, no, that one can still go. We're happy with that for our members. So how did you engage your members apart from the professional learning?
Our website is definitely a big draw card for our association. We have over 1,000 classroom resources on our website, all written by our own members who've sent them through and allowed them to be uploaded. So we've always had a lot of resource support for our teachers, and especially from our collaborative programming project, we had a lot of resources ready to go. Where we targeted our support, we had a few key areas. The first one was we developed and shared a whole lot of booklets that could be pre-prepared on modules that we knew could be taught in that remote setting. So obviously things like fishing and seafood cooking, snorkeling, they're not things we can easily teach online via computers or even in booklet form. So we focused on modules that we knew would be better taught in that environment. Things like marine mammals and Antarctica and dangerous marine creatures, topics that were less practical based and could be studied in that format. So we produced a series of about 4 or 5 booklets so that students that didn't have internet access had a really concrete collection of work that they could continue through in their own time, at their own pace, and especially without internet access, because we have a large number of members who are at schools with students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, who don't have internet, who don't have laptops. So the booklets were a great way to support every student, no matter what they had as far as internet and laptop goes. But at the same time, we took all of those modules and we took those booklets and we then turned them into individual lessons in Google Docs. And I built a Google Classroom for our members where I set up each of those topics. I set them up in individual modules and in a sequence of lessons. So some modules had a series of 14 lessons, some had a series of around 10 lessons. Teachers could then set it to their own pace. So depending on their period allocation or timing or their particular school set up for online learning, they could say complete lesson 1 over these 3 days or complete lesson 1 on this day and set out a timetable of learning. The biggest barrier for that, we thought that was a great idea, but then the problem with Google Classroom is that It's restricted depending on the sector you work in. So as a Department of Education teacher, I could share it with any other department teachers, but teachers in the independent or the Catholic sector could not access that Google Classroom that I'd built. So to get around that, we built a drive, and I placed all the individual lessons that I'd built for each of the different modules. We placed that in Drive, and then I made a tutorial video to show teachers using Screencaster how they could then take the individual lessons in Drive and build a classroom as I had. So it gave our members that opportunity to learn how you turn a Google Doc into an assignment that you can set with particular deadlines for your students, how it could be adjusted to their particular context or needs, and also how they could add marking rubrics and others, some other really little great tricks within Google Classroom to monitor their student work completion as well. And yeah, continue just with lots of resources to the website as teachers sent them through, and lots of sharing. As I've already said, the collegiality amongst our association is amazing. So we have a really active Facebook group that's only available to financial members. So we were encouraging a lot of sharing on there. We were posting a lot. Teachers were sharing things like virtual excursions. I know as part of our marine mammals, we built in things like the Taronga Zoo seal show. They made videos, and you could do a virtual excursion to Taronga Zoo. Use the live webcams in a variety of zoos to actually view the marine mammals, and sharing things like using the Antarctica base webcams that you can access and things like that. So lots and lots of sharing through our Facebook groups, and supporting each other with particular challenges we were facing during that online learning time, and supporting each other. And then we also worked with some of our stakeholders. So for example, we work with the Australian Fishing Trade Association. They sponsor us each year and send out free fishing kits to member schools who want to sign up for the Let's Go Fishing program. And we were speaking about our next update of that program and our new schools who would like to receive fishing kits. And I was explaining some of the challenges we were facing. And then after very generously organised as part of our grant, they sent schools with 2 new fishing rods, and they sent us casting plugs and a variety of activities. So casting plugs, forgive me here as I explain it. So basically when we're teaching the fishing unit, we get the kids to set up and we show them how to set up a fishing rod, but we teach them to cast on the bottom oval. So we will then set up a whole lot of hula hoops that the kids then aim for, and we have competitions in getting the students to practice their casting aim. So AFTRA actually supported us by sending out a whole lot of casting plugs to our member schools to set them up for that casting practice, so that while excursions weren't permitted and we couldn't get out into the marine environment, our students could then use the casting plugs once they came back to school to still practice that skill and get involved in their fishing, even though they couldn't go on excursions yet. They also provided us with a whole lot of tutorial videos as well, so that we had that online video support for that fishing topic. So our stakeholders were very supportive as well.
That's fantastic. It must look very funny having the kids on the oval casting your hoops.
It does. It does, very much so. We get strange looks from members of the public. You see them thinking, oh, you're doing it wrong, but once they see the hula hoops out, they sort of get the gist of what we're trying to do.
And I guess in some respects, the kids are actually having more practice by doing that. Because
very much so. So it's very much focused on that skill. And one of the things we love is you always get a few keen fishermen in the group who obviously have done it outside of school. And we love getting the students then to become the teachers and helping out their peers and teaching them how to do it.
Oh, that's cool. So behind the scenes then for your association, what have you looked at in terms of this new norm we've got, say, for the next 6 months? What decisions has your exec and your committee made that's going to move you forward into this next period? Because we still don't quite know what that's going to look like. I guess the baseline is what's been happening in the last 3 or 4 months is going to go at least into the next 6 months. So what sort of things have your association just briefly have put together?
We are a small association, so we're not like many other associations that have officers or employees. We don't have a single employee. Every one of our executive is a teacher, a full-time teacher that does this as a volunteer role on top of their full-time jobs. So we didn't have that challenge of necessarily having employees that we had to support or any kind of change in the way we operate, because the way we operate is we can continue to do so because we're all working and continue to work. Our executive is spread across New South Wales, so we're very used to working remotely and working online and working via phone and email. So as far as that aspect, it actually hasn't presented too many challenges for us and how we work as an executive in particular. One big challenge was we had to move our AGM to Zoom for the first time ever because our AGM is usually held at our annual conference. That couldn't go ahead. So we did have to move our AGM to Zoom and put the structures around that to make sure that went successfully and that we were following all the requirements of our constitution. One of our biggest processes we've had to do is we've had to implement COVID safe plans for our boat smart venues. So we trialled one of our hubs opening up last term. We then had to close down again when the school restrictions ramped up because of the cases that were shown to be in schools. But now we're looking at, we're reopening again now since the rules changed again at the start of this term. So we've had to develop COVID safe plans for each one of our venues because they're different venues. They have to each have their own individual COVID safe plan. And we've also worked with you, with PTC, on making sure that we're meeting our requirements, as well as working with RMS because RMS oversee our boating program because we have to be an authorised training provider with them to be able to do the boat licensing component. So we've had to make sure that we're following both RMS guidelines, PTC guidelines, and then also the relevant department, Catholic and independent sector guidelines, depending on which sector we're working with. We do tend to work to the Department of Education guidelines, mainly because they're usually the toughest out of all of our sectors. So making sure that we're following all of those COVID guidelines. And we've updated our sample risk assessment for those programs as well to make sure that we're COVID safe. And just continuing to use email, our website very much so, and Facebook groups and Facebook pages for communication to continue to support our members based on individual challenges or needs.
Fantastic. And you've covered a lot there, but I'm just wondering in regards to 2021, what plans have you got and implementation strategies have you got to tackle 2021, even though we don't really know what's happening?
Yeah. Well, we're in that pivotal time where we need to develop our new strategic plan. So our previous strategic plan finishes at the end of this year. So we're in the process of now getting ready for our new strategic plan and developing that. We're very proud that we met all of the goals of our previous plan, and we're excited to look at what it is now that we want to achieve and where we want to take our association next. We've begun our community consultation stage. So we've sent out a survey to all of our members and collected that data back, and we'll now touch base with some of our key stakeholders from BIA, Transport for New South Wales, AFTA, our university contacts and more to make sure we're really planning effectively for what we want to achieve over the next 4 years. We've just finalised our agreement with RMS. We had to update our agreement to remain an authorised training provider. That's come with some new challenges. We had to write a whole lot of new policy. We had to write a quality assurance policy, a complaints handling policy, and we've had to develop some new procedures as well. So once this agreement's finalised, we've got to get all of our hub coordinators together. So we have 5 hubs across New South Wales, all the way from Ballina in the north, and we've got Illawarra in the south and a few in between. So we need to get all of our hub coordinators together to update our policies and procedures in line with our new agreement. And then also our goal is to have a teacher training day next year as part of our Boat Smart program. So we have quite a significant grant for Transport for New South Wales, and one of our requirements of that grant is a teacher training day, because the goal of that grant and the goal of our program is to ensure safe behaviour on the water. And so part of that is teaching teachers how to teach water safety within their own school environment. So that teacher training day, obviously we have to wait till professional learning can be face-to-face to hold that, because it has to be in practical in nature. We'll be down at one of our boat hubs with the boats out showing the practical program. So that's one of our big early goals. We're obviously highly invested in the curriculum reform process. We want to ensure that our subject has a future. We think it's such a great avenue for both academic and non-academic students, which is a focus of the new curriculum review, to provide pathways for all students. So that's one thing that we definitely want to contribute to and be a part of, because we don't want to see our subject disappear, because we know what a great subject it is and what a difference it's made to so many students across New South Wales. One of the biggest requests from our members is they want to see an ATAR-based subject in stage 6. So currently our stage 6 subject is a non-ATAR-based subject. So we have a lot of students who want to go into marine biology or study marine science at university. The stage 6 subject just isn't for them. So we have to steer them into sciences like biology or chemistry or earth and environmental science. So many of our teachers express interest in wanting the stage 6 subject to be ATAR based. Queensland's just done it. So we would very much like to see not only our subject continue into the future, but ideally become an ATAR based subject. And then one of our other biggest challenges is about challenging the staffing agreement. And this is restricted to our Department of Education teachers. I'm regularly contacted by teachers very concerned that their principal is holding them to a class of 30 students. We're a TAS classified subject, but we're actually taught mainly by science teachers. So we did a bit of a survey to work out which teachers are actually teaching marine, and it's about 60% science, 30% TAS, and then we've got some random ones like PDHPE, geography, and so on. So because it's not classified, because it's a lot of science teachers teaching it, even though it's TAS classified, they're being held to the science classroom cap, not the TAS classroom cap. And that's a significant safety concern for our teachers. For example, our ratios make it really challenging. If we take a class snorkeling, our supervision ratios are 1 teacher per 8 students. So if you've got a class of 30, you actually have to take 4 teachers off class for the day to be able to meet our supervision requirements. And with a 60% based practical based subject, we're doing practical projects. We're in the water. We're using drills and equipment that you would see in a woodwork room. We're doing cooking and seafood cooking, which you would see in a food tech room. And yet we're being asked to do it with classes of 30. So this is something we've been challenging all year and trying to get the Federation behind us. And the silly thing is the reason it's in place is because our subject was introduced after the agreement. So just this anomaly that's sitting there, and our teachers are suffering for it, and it's having a significant impact. So that's one of our biggest challenges and things that we need to do to support our members. So it's a challenge we're continuing to fight. It's very slow, which is frustrating. And unfortunately, we're getting... the Federation's had a fair bit on their hands this year with COVID and protecting teachers with COVID, and we very much recognise that. But because we're so small, it's hard to sort of get people to understand the impact it's having. We don't have that huge lobby behind us like some of the other bigger associations. So it's very much something we're continuing to push and to try. I am very much worried that it's going to get swept under sort of bigger issues. So it's about continuing to drive that. And then hopefully having our conference next year. So I'm pretty confident we won't be able to get to Tasmania. We're keeping it there as an option, but I am not hopeful. So we have a backup venue at Foster. So I've got some teachers there that are ready to host. So Tasmania is organised. It's just a matter of picking it back up when we can. The big draw card for Tasmania is working with the university down there, which has provided so many great scholarships and opportunities for marine teachers in New South Wales. And it's a partnership we want to continue. And I know our members would get so much out of that. That particular venue would learn so much. But we've put Foster in as a backup, and I'm very much hoping we can get face-to-face PL off the ground next year.
We have everything crossed for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqui. That was very insightful and in-depth, just to see how you've been tackling everything and what your association has been doing. And I'm sure it's going to be very, very helpful to other associations as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.